To remain updated with the latest business news, click on the bell icon.
It's been a tough week at the office if you're Mark Zuckerberg or someone working at Meta. The stock took a bad hit, the Meta stock, after dismal earnings, slow user growth, and so many questions and doubts about the metaverse. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. A few days ago, Facebook said that the privacy change made by Apple to its iOS operating system last year, which was on iOS 14.5, would decrease the social media company Meta's sales this year by about $10 billion. That's 10 Indian unicorns here in Mumbai or Bangalore, and that is one massive number to actually put on record. Well, let's start off with the basics. How could one privacy feature change on your iPhones and your iPads actually impact Facebook so much, a competing tech company, that it cost them $10 billion? So what is app tracking transparency? So basically, your iPhone and your iPads have what's called an identification for advertisers. It's a software tracker or an IDFA. An IDFA is Apple's randomized identifier, which essentially allows advertisers to track your activity across apps and the internet without actually pulling in your personal information. Well, you might be wondering, why are these advertisers tracking me and my data? Well, that's essentially how the marketing and advertising business has worked in a Web 2.0 world, where the Facebooks and Googles of the world have actually worked on an advertising-based model. But Apple wanted to change that, and Apple wanted to take a strong stand on privacy. Now, these trackers and identifiers are essentially working within your devices. I want to understand how IDFAs are, and we'll get an expert to explain that to you. But just in a nutshell and practical terms, if you keep talking around your devices saying, well, guitar or something about musical instruments, don't be surprised if your iPad or your iPhone is listening and a few minutes later you have advertisements of guitars and musical instruments and guitar training classes and whatnot on all your devices and on apps like Facebook and Instagram. That's what Apple wanted to really do away with and change for its users. That's where this new feature, app tracking transparency, comes in. So, if last year you updated to iOS 14.5 and this year you moved on to iOS 15 and all the latest versions on your iOS devices, then you'll get this option, which is the app tracking transparency option. It's a prompt or a notification on each app where Apple and your iOS device gives you an option whether you want to share that data with the app. Right? So if you do away with that, then your phone or device will not share that data with that particular app, or will request that app not to use that identifier data. And this is a big deal when it comes to privacy, but more importantly, it's a big blow when it comes to companies like Facebook and Snap. Now, Meta hasn't taken this lying down. Over the past few months, they've come up with statements talking about how Apple is looking at profits and not privacy, so to speak. But Apple is also strong in its stance, saying that this is an innovative way and a foolproof way of actually protecting their users' privacy and making sure that they have the option in terms of how much of their data they want tracked by third-party apps. Now, all of these features, IDFA, tracking, app tracking, transparency, can sound a little bit like Greek to you. So I got an expert who's been tracking this space, understands exactly how Facebook operates, and of course how Apple operates and what they do inside these devices. Tarun Pathak of Counterpoint Research joins me on the show. Tarun, what a pleasure to have you on Tech Today. Now, you've been tracking this space for a while and you understand what happened with this one privacy change, this one feature change by Apple that changed the fortunes of Facebook altogether. What is an identifier? What is an IDFA?
I'll try to explain it in as simple terms as possible. If you look at the entire advertising space, it works on this TPTR framework, which means track, profile, target, and then repeat, basically with the ads. So this particular app tracking transparency, what Apple came out with last year, it targets the first part of it and the very essential part of it, which is the tracking the user. So let's take an example. I'm an iOS user. I'm interacting with a particular app. And now during the process, what happens, a lot of this data, my data, which can be in the form of location, my browsing history, my IP, my spending pattern, that goes along with the app. Basically, I give them consent to basically have that, and in a lot of the cases users are not basically aware of it. So advertisers call them as identifiers basically. So with these particular identifiers, they create your digital avatar, or you can say that profiling. So what happens is during this process, the entire profiling is being passed on to the third-party agencies or these advertisers used to track and make a dedicated targeting advertising to you as a user. And now what has happened in the past, all these things were happening, but with this particular framework, what Apple does is that gives users a choice to basically turn it off, which means all these associated identifiers will turn to basically zero for these advertisers, and they will not get any data. And this is very, very important part. Like I said, is the first part of the TPTR framework, which means your tracking history will be virtually zero for these advertisers. And of course, there are other ways to track you, to track your digital history, but this largely applies to what you are doing outside that particular app, basically in the form of your browsing or what other things you are doing outside that particular app.
Now, it's interesting to see how in this interconnected world that we live in of likes, shares and retweets and comments and subscribes, well, essentially, anything happening in that tech ecosystem can impact another company, and actually a small privacy feature change can cost another company billions of dollars.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.